We're here in the northwest part of the state, headed to Tactical Edge. That's one of many of the gun dealers that service this area. This particular gun dealer, they've had some issues in the past with the ATF, and under the Biden administration, their license was revoked. But under these new Trump policies, they got it back.
Donald Trump campaigned on loosening regulations the gun industry viewed as overzealous.
Your Second Amendment will always be safe with me as your president.
And he followed through. In addition to repealing Biden's zero-tolerance policy on gun seller violations, Trump also scrapped a program tracking dealers who had repeatedly sold guns that were later found at crime scenes. The Trump administration has also invited gun shop dealers who lost their licenses under Biden to reapply. ATF confirmed that it has granted new licenses to at least 23 of them, but wouldn't share the names of those shops. A CNN investigation independently found that nearly a dozen gun shops that had their licenses yanked under Biden are now back in business. One of those gun shops in Tennessee agreed to speak with us.
We were not giving out guns to people that didn't, or like that should not have them, or purposely like not running background checks just to get a sale done. We've never done anything like that. We will never do anything like that. But the way that the ATF portrayed that and spoke to us, it made us feel like criminals.
When the Tactical Edge lost its license in 2023, the ATF cited repeated violations over several inspections, including failing to run background checks, which the Tactical Edge denies, and not properly completing ATF forms during gun sales.
It's not up to us to say approved or denied. It's up to our government agency that looks into that person, that has all the information that we don't have access to.
You maintain that even those form errors wouldn't lead to the transfer of a firearm to someone who maybe shouldn't have it.
On the forms specifically, I truly do not see a path that would happen.
But even when a store properly sells a gun, it can still end up at the hands of someone committing a crime. In 2021, gunfire erupted at a birthday party in the south side of Chicago. More than 100 shots were fired, with 8 people hit. 1 person died.
There was a firearm that you had sold at this store that was recovered at the scene of a mass shooting in Chicago. There was no indication that it was used, but it was found there.
That doesn't mean that the gun shop or us sold the firearm to that criminal.
Chicago PD's investigation found most of the guns that were recovered from that shooting came from one region, including a gun sold by the Tactical Edge. The gun was purchased just 80 days before the incident and linked to a gun trafficking ring that was charged by the U.S. Justice Department. There's no evidence the person the Tactical Edge sold that gun to was part of that ring, but its route to Chicago followed the same pattern as other guns found at the scene. None of the violations that later cost the Tactical Edge its license were related to the Chicago case.
If I do my checks and balances here and I know that this firearm is going to a person that is legally able to own a firearm, once it walks out that door, I don't have control over it.
What are the things that you're looking for that may be an indication that you're dealing with a straw buyer or someone who may be using this for a criminal purpose?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we look out for. You usually have a person picking out the firearm and a person with the money. When you see those two things combined, there's a very good chance you're dealing with a straw purchase. And at that point, if we get a whiff of something that just doesn't feel right with this person, we have no problem declining a sale.
And you've done that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mariana Mitchum is an ATF veteran who serves as an advisor to the gun control group Everytown. She reviewed the Tactical Edge's revocation records.
They've had numerous inspections before they lost their license. At each one of those inspections, they would have been instructed by ATF on how to properly complete all of these records. By the time they got to the 3rd inspection and the same violations were happening, at that point ATF has to choose to protect the public when there is a willful violator of the Gun Control Act. These weren't paperwork violations, these weren't minor clerical issues, these were dangerous violations.
The Tactical Edge, which says their infractions were just paperwork errors, wasn't alone and facing scrutiny by the ATF under Biden. In Colorado, the ATF revoked a dealer's license for allegedly helping a felon illegally raffle guns online. They fought the revocation in court, and DOJ dismissed the case after Trump took office. A shop in Michigan was allegedly linked to at least 100 crime guns recovered from crime scenes. They received a new license in February. Neither company responded to CNN's request for comment.
Even just one gun being trafficked to someone is extremely dangerous because 90% of the guns that traffickers obtain end up in the hands of people who cannot legally purchase them, right? So we're talking violent criminals, we're talking juveniles, and we're talking trigger pullers, right? Those folks that are getting a gun to go out and shoot someone.
The ATF told CNN it takes seriously the need to have proper oversight over dealers. We're trying to make sure we deploy our resources with a focus on those who are actually engaged in business. Still, Mitchum worries the ATF isn't empowered to go after violators in the same way.
It's devastating to see ATF pivot away from that. If you stop the trafficker and you stop the gun store from supplying those traffickers, you stop the downstream violence.
And then this is the memorial wall, which we have been building up for years.
These are the faces of those lost to gun violence on full display here in Chicago's South Side.
As the years gone, we had to add more and more families and expand it even further. It's so many lives on this board that are no longer here. My brother is actually here. He's right up there, Terrell Bosley.
Trevon Bosley is a violence prevention advocate working to keep illegal guns off the streets of his hometown.
What's your take on this whole notion that, there were previously gun dealers around this country that had their licenses basically taken away because they were unlawfully selling guns? Yeah. Now a lot of those places are getting these licenses back.
Yeah, it's insane that, we worked hard to get to the point where some of these bad actors were being held accountable, because a lot of these guns recovered in some of these crime schemes can be, tracked back to these same establishments. People have such a stigma and idea of Chicago, and Chicago is this so violent place, and they do this, and gun laws don't work and things like that. While our communities are being flooded with guns from Indiana, from Wisconsin, all these places that have lax gun laws.
What do you say to the criticism that might come from gun dealers that you guys just don't like guns, you don't like the Second Amendment?
I mean, there's no problem with people having guns, but just like any other industry, we need to have checks and balances.
A rare point of agreement for some Second Amendment advocates and those who favor stricter regulation.
Critics may say, well, if you get rid of that zero tolerance, those strict policies, that may weaken incentives for gun dealers to do their robust checks. What do you say to that?
This is my livelihood. For the past 15 years, this is what it's been. I will protect this at all costs. So 1 or 2 firearms, it's not worth it to us. There are absolutely bad shop owners out there that just don't care. And I think that those people are the ones that deserve, obviously to get their license taken away. It's our job to be that last line of defense and stop it where we can.
Do you feel hopeful? Does this feel like this is going in the wrong direction and there's despair? How do you feel?
Man, at this moment, my feelings are kind of mixed. Because I've seen the success of our violence prevention movement, but now as these gun dealers are receiving their licenses back, as violence prevention funding is being slashed across the country, we can't monitor the streets like we used to. We can't provide this many programs, and we have even more guns now flooding back into the hands of those who don't need to have them.